Hello. Cool. Well, super stoked to be here with you all. I'm Zach. I'm the worship director here, and this is my kids. Oops. Holland is the older boy, and Auburn, my daughter, and then Caitlin, my wife. Caitlin is also Brenda's daughter, so I am her son-in-law. And the reason that I'm here is I don't, or many people seem to think that I work at the church. I don't actually work at the church. I work at a company called Visco. It's a social media app, I guess, and I was on the founding team back in 2011 for that, and I've been a part of this space for a long time, and just so that's kind of my background. Visco launched in 2011. We launched our app in 2012, a sharing kind of component in 2014, and it's just grown really exponentially. Now, the latest numbers that I've seen is that we are the #1 branded hashtag on Instagram, the hashtag VSCO, if you've seen that. 200 million of those out there. The company's taken $90 million in funding. We have 40 million monthly active users globally, and we serve billions of images to our users every month. And the business that we have is basically through a paid membership that we have about 2 million people on. We don't have any ads or anything. So I tell you all that just so that you know my context and my background. Basically, like, I have a perspective that maybe not all of you have, and I've seen some things, and I'm aware of things, and I'm certainly not here as a representative of Visco, but I'm here as your friend, as your brother in Christ, hopefully to share some things that'll help you. So before we get started, I do have a challenge, which is try not checking social media for this whole talk. I promise to be as brief as I can and be interesting. But it's just kind of a fun little challenge. So why are we here? By the way, I am on the engineering team at Visco. I am not on the design team, so you're going to have to deal with a kind of ugly slide deck. Sorry. There's a lot to say about social media, and I'm only going to be scratching the surface here, but it's been with us for a while now, and it's become complicated. Our world is so integrated with social media now, but it brings up a lot of different questions, and especially as parents, there's a lot of questions. It's very complicated, and some of the problems are things that you may not even be able to quite put your finger on. You can feel that something's not always quite right, but it's hard to know what. And the main if you remember nothing else, this is kind of what I want you to remember. Social media, it is a tool, and we tend to think of it sort of like any other tool, like a screwdriver on your table or something. But it's not quite like that. You do get to use it, but it's a tool that wants to conform you to make you do particular things, because it's a business tool, and it wants to conform you to particular business needs, and we'll get into that. But the big verse that we're going to be coming back around to a bunch is this. It's Romans 12:2. It says, "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect." And so we can't be passive consumers of this thing. We need to be transformed and not conformed. And so how do we do that? So I'm going to be going through a lot of information. This is not really my opinion. I'm just going to be presenting you with facts and current events and things like that, so that you kind of understand what social media is, how it works, what's going on with it, and then Faith's going to get into definitely much more like practical life kind of stuff. So briefly, just how did we get here? This has all happened pretty recently. How did we get here? So 2002 is pretty much when it's considered that social media sort of really hit mainstream. Did anybody have a Friendster? Again, it's just Faith and I, man. Okay, well, OG, way back then, social media kind of got its start on Friendster, and then MySpace was quickly behind that. The Facebook in 2004, only for college students. YouTube was 2005, 06, we got Twitter, and Facebook became available to everyone. So only 13 years ago. The iPhone, 2013, really considered the beginning of like the smartphone era. 2008, we got Android. launching. 2009, the Facebook like button launched, and before that, I don't know if you remember, you had to like comment on things. You couldn't just hit a like button. The next year, Instagram launched. The next year, Snapchat, which was previously Picaboo, launched. The next year, Facebook hit 1 billion users worldwide, and they bought Instagram for $1 billion, which was big news. 2 years later, they bought WhatsApp for $19 billion, and a little app called Musical.ly started. 2 years later, Musical.ly was bought by Behance, who owns TikTok, and that was about $1 billion. We don't quite know what. So TikTok merged with Musical.ly 3 years ago now. 2 years ago, Facebook hit 2 billion users worldwide, and then just last year, Instagram hit 1 billion users. And just to look at one of them, this is Facebook's growth over that time, about 15 years, from pretty much zero to I extrapolated. Their latest numbers is about 2.4 billion people on Facebook, and that's out of 7 or 8 billion people on planet Earth. So it's a lot of people are on Facebook particularly, but just social media. And my point in going through all this is that this has happened extremely fast, like mind-bogglingly fast in, like a teenager's lifetime, basically going from no social media to the entire, like most of the world, mainly, or a lot of the world is connected to each other on social media. And we're still learning what these changes really even mean. If you look back in time, the printing press was a similarly huge revolutionary invention that the Protestant Reformation that we are all a product of was really enabled by the printing press. But that didn't happen until about 80 years after the printing press was invented. And so we're 17 years into this thing, and I would just submit to you, we still don't really know what's coming, like how society has changed and what is really the consequence of this all. So we're going to look at that. Real quick, we're going to talk about, we'll talk about age groups. So generations, baby boomers, you're about 55 to 73, so that may be a few of you. Gen X, 43 to 54. Millennials, that's me, 23 to 42. And it's older than you thought, right? Like we think of millennials as these like losers in their parents' basement, but like we're kind of getting older. And then Gen Z is pretty much anybody 22 and younger. And so we've looked at how we got here. Real quick, just a survey of what here is. Really just looking at the U.S., 75% of the U.S. is on Facebook, 40% on Facebook Messenger, 42% YouTube, 21% Instagram, which is mostly millennials and Gen Z, and higher percentage of females. Twitter is about 20%, again, mostly millennials. WhatsApp, 20%. Snapchat, 24%, and this one is huge with Gen Z, like I think it's 73 or 76% of Gen Z is on Snapchat in the U.S. TikTok, small but growing quickly at 5%, mostly Gen Z girls, like 70-something% girls. And then just because I'm here, VSCO, about 3% of the U.S., and again, mostly Gen Z girls. Have any of you read about VSCO girls lately? Oh, yeah. Anybody have a Hydro Flask or a scrunchie? It's this like really crazy, weird cultural meme happening right now. So that's where here is. And social media has brought some tremendous, like, incredible abilities. Just the ability to, like, talk to anybody on any corner of the earth at any time is amazing and catch up with people. But it has brought some problems. And the main one that I kind of want to cycle around is this idea of behavioral addiction. There's a really great book called Digital Minimalism, and I love his definition. He says it's a condition in which a person engages in a use of a substance or in a behavior for which the rewarding effects provide a compelling incentive to repeatedly pursue the behavior despite detrimental consequences. So you're doing something that rewards you and gives you good reason to keep doing it, even if it's not that great for you to keep doing it. And so I want to look at the time that we spend on social media on average. The latest numbers that I could find from last year is that the average time worldwide that we spend on social media is 142 minutes a day, so 2 hours, 22 minutes a day. And that's like, somebody's conjecture. In 2016, though, 3 years ago, Facebook reported that the average user spends 50 minutes a day on their platforms, Facebook, Instagram, and Messenger, so 50 minutes combined, and that 76% of those log in every day. And that's kind of like in a braggy, shareholder price kind of context. So that's pretty good data. That's 3 years ago. Snapchat, those users spend an average of 30 minutes a day on the platform, and the average millennials, we check our phones a lot, like 150 times or more a day. So just some quick math. I won't make you, don't really do the equation because I may have some mistakes on here, but I'm pretty sure this is right. So over the next 50 years, like if you're in your 20s, 30s, let's just say you got 50 years of like great health left. In 50 years, 142 minutes a day, plus some time to sleep, that's 6.5 years of your next 50 years of sleep, wake up, do social media all day, go to bed, do that again. 6 years of the next 50 years. That's kind of what that breaks down to. It's a lot. And even if you're just in the average Facebook 3 years ago category, 50 minutes a day, that's almost 2.5 years of the next 50 years of your life. It's a lot. And there's this company called App Annie that does reports that a lot of the tech industry relies on to kind of keep tabs on each other. And they did a report, and they said that Gen Z actually spends 20% more time than the rest of the population and engages with their most used apps 30% more than everyone else. So those numbers are probably higher for them. And so I just want to hit this verse again. Don't be conformed to the world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that you may by testing you may discern what the will of God is and what's good and acceptable and perfect. And so we can't be passive consumers of this thing. This thing, we'll get into this, it wants to conform us to particular things, and this world social media is the world, essentially. And so it's hard not to be conformed to it when you're spending 2 to 6 years of your life on this thing. But I know, so what? Like, dude, whoa, guy, come on now. Who cares? I'm not hurting anyone. I'm on social media, sometimes I just kind of like it. This is how I interact with my friends. What are you actually saying? And I look at it when I'm in the grocery line or going to the restroom. I wasn't doing anything then anyways. So what's the big deal? Well, there's some studies that are coming out that we're finding that social media is not great for your mental health. There was a study just last year of about 1 million kids that found that more time on electronic communication and less time on non-screen activities resulted in a lower psychological well-being. And there was kind of a big to-do a few years ago. Facebook actually did their own study, and they kind of found this Facebook's actually not that great for you. But their kind of premise was but if you're engaged on the platform with your friends and really engaged in it, then it's going to be, it actually does improve your mental health. And Stanford, who is in the same kind of South Bay of the Bay Area as Facebook, they did their own study, and they said giving up Facebook improved people's mental health. The study found that, on average, those who gave up Facebook reported small but significant improvements in well-being. In other words, engaging on Facebook didn't make people feel better, as Facebook has suggested. So, probably doesn't make you feel better. And there's some reasons for this. I love what Pastor Craig Groeschel says. He says, you're comparing your behind the scenes to everyone else's highlight reel. So, of course, you're not going to feel so great about yourself. Madonna, the fountain of wisdom, she says, you get caught up in comparing yourself to others. I think Instagram is made to make you feel bad. And for us younger folks, Selena Gomez, she says, I used to use Instagram a lot, but I think it's just becoming really unhealthy for young people, including myself, to spend all their time fixating on all these comments and letting this stuff in. And then additionally, there's this kind of growing issue with loneliness. The former Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy, is kind of sounding the alarm on this. He says, technology can help or hurt. It's simply a tool, but for too many people, it's led to substituting online connections for offline, in-person connections, and I think that's been harmful. And he says, it turns out that loneliness is associated with a reduction in your lifespan that is as severe as the lifespan you see with smoking 15 cigarettes a day, which is like, what? That seems crazy. But, I mean, he's the Surgeon General. Like, I don't know this stuff. He's saying this. And a big insurance company called Cigna, they did a study as well, a survey, and they said the nation's 75 million millennials and Gen Z adults, they're lonelier than any other demographic, and they report being in worse health than the other generations. 54% said that they feel like nobody knows them well. 4 in 10, so almost half, reported that they lack companionship, the relationships aren't meaningful, and that they are isolated from others. So this is crazy. Like, we are so connected to each other, right? And yet half of Gen Z and millennials are saying, I don't have companionship, nobody knows me, I'm isolated. What in the world is happening here? And this actually has a name. It's called the social media paradox. Psychologists are calling it this. And it's essentially that social media has allowed us to become more connected to each other than any other time in history. And yet many Americans are feeling more lonely and isolated than ever before. The University of Pennsylvania did their own study, and they said Facebook, Snapchat, and Instagram may not be great for your personal well-being. Here's the bottom line, says the Associate Director of Clinical Training. She says, using less social media than you normally would leads to significant decreases in both depression and loneliness. These effects are particularly pronounced for those who came in depressed into the study. So that's crazy. Using social media less could elevate your mood, could decrease depression and loneliness. And, you know, I think the reason for this, we've all seen. Like, how many of us have been at a restaurant or at a party and we've seen this, where you got two people facing each other but on their phones, and there's a real problem with just communication and isolation that some of these things bring us. There's a band that I love, and they wrote a song about this, and the guy is basically saying to this girl in the song, like, I'm right here. What are you so interested in your phone? Like, why am I even here? What's going on? Like, talk to me. And of course, because we are so engrossed in our phones sometimes, it kind of does have this effect of making us lonely, which can be very dangerous. And so one of the things I want to just call out is that God calls us to community, not just connection, not just like knowing what other people are doing, but actually being in each other's lives, brotherly, sisterly love, you know, being in each other's business, doing life together, serving each other, you know, really getting in there. And social media can be kind of these empty calories in our appetite for love and, you know, the desire to be known. It can be like, you know, this bowl of Captain Crunch, and it, you know, it's good, but if that's all you ever eat, you don't feel very good. You're not very healthy after a while, and social media can be that for our kind of desire to be known and to have fellowship and community with other people. And then also briefly, it's also kind of eroding our ability to focus or even be present with others. You know, multitasking has been proven time and time again to be a myth. Just humans can't do that, really. And the co-creator of the like button was actually asked, like, what's the most invasive invention of social media? And he said it's the push notification. Like, most of that stuff, it's just this little hit of information that you want and you get stuck on, and a lot of times it could wait or it just doesn't even matter at all. And so there is a reason for all this. It's not completely random. There's a reason for the problem. I love this little GIF. It's dopamine. New York professor Adam Atler describes this well. He says, the minute you take a drug, drink alcohol, smoke a cigarette, when you get a like on social media, all of these experiences produce dopamine, which is a chemical that's associated with pleasure. And he goes on to say, when somebody likes an Instagram post or any content that you share, it's a bit like taking a drug. As far as your brain is concerned, it's a very similar experience. Now, the reason why is because it's not guaranteed that you're going to get likes on your posts. It's the unpredictability of that process that makes it so addictive. If you knew every time you posted something that you would get 100 likes, it would become boring really fast. And then there's another doctor, his name is Dr. Rawson, and he describes it, he goes a little deeper. He says, when dopamine is released, you get a rush of feel-good emotions, an overall pleasurable experience. In turn, that rush of dopamine triggers a behavioral loop where if we post something, we get likes and we feel good and we keep checking for more. If we don't get likes, it kind of feels almost like a negative consequence because it's in this really public nature that pronounces it even more. Any squirt of dopamine that we're getting in this large audience, it's just validating even more, and it's magnified knowing that everyone else can see it. And that need is reasonable, he says. We all crave attention, we crave positive reinforcement, and without those notifications, you would have no idea when it would come. So it's hard not to get hooked on that sense of personal validation. And so we get kind of stuck in this loop, and much of it's because we like it when we get those comments and likes and the notifications, and we don't know quite when they're going to come. And so psychologists have been studying this actually for quite a while. This is called a variable reward schedule. And it's the key to social media users repeatedly checking their screens. It's also the key to like gambling addictions, video game addictions, the news, email, like a lot of things that we get addicted to, it's because of this variable reward. And back in the 30s, 40s, this psychologist named B.F. Skinner at Harvard did a study with mice where he had this kind of box that he created where they could push a lever and different things would happen. And one of the things that they observed is that the mice responded most voraciously to random rewards. So the mice would press a lever, and sometimes they would get a small treat, other times a large treat, other times nothing at all. And unlike the mice that received the same treat every time, the mice that received variable rewards seemed to press the lever compulsively. And that's kind of what's happening for us. Tristan Harris, he's a pretty big figure in the kind of the tech space. He used to be the Google design ethicist until he just kind of left because he felt like he couldn't really get any traction, and he started his own company. And he says, here's the unfortunate truth. Several billion people have a slot machine in their pocket. When we pull our phone out of our pocket, we're playing a slot machine to see what notifications we've received. When we swipe our finger to scroll the Instagram feed, when we pull to refresh our email, when we swipe faces on dating apps like Tinder, all of that, we're playing a slot machine to see what happens. And even the creators of the like button back in 2009, Leah Pearlman, she said, after leaving the company, she says, we created this thing, and suddenly I felt like I'm actually getting addicted to the feedback. And she goes on to say that now she's left Facebook, she's working somewhere else, and she has somebody else run her social media because she doesn't want to get addicted to it, which is fascinating. The other co-creator of the like button, Justin Rosenstein, he says, the main intention I had was to make positivity the path of least resistance, right? Because it used to be that you'd have to write something every time. And we all know we don't always write the nicest things. We're kind of lazy or mean. And so, you can just click that little button and you can be nice. And he says, I think it succeeded in its goals, but it also created large unintended negative side effects. In a way, it was too successful. And 10 years later, since 2009, that button has been pressed 1.13 trillion times. So it has been extremely successful. And Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, they could all take a look at their metrics and kind of go, oh my gosh, we're kind of messing with people's lives, we're messing with society. Maybe we should take a step back and not do this so much. But this stuff is not totally an accident like the like button might have been. This is kind of how the business of social media is set up to be. Anza Raskin, he designed the infinite scroll. So as you're scrolling, new things keep appearing below so that it's like that variable reward, ooh, what else is down there? And you keep scrolling forever. He says, in order to get the next round of funding, in order to get the stock price up, the amount of time that people spend in your app has to go up. So when you put that much pressure on one number, you're going to start trying to invent new ways of getting people to stay hooked. And also, Sean Parker, the founding president in the early days of Facebook, he came out publicly saying that early on the company set out to consume as much user time as possible. He said that it was exploiting a vulnerability in human psychology, and the inventors, he said, understood this consciously, and we did it anyways. And when we look at this growth chart again, it kind of puts a little bit of a different spin on it, knowing, oh, like they're kind of using these like psychological tricks to get their numbers up because that's their business. And so likes, comments, retweets, snap streaks, friend requests, all these little buzzes that we get, these are all the variable rewards that keep us pushing the lever, engaging in the social media apps, not too unlike the Skinner box mice. And if you follow the money, you can kind of see why this has happened. So 2019, it's estimated that there is going to be a $250 billion digital advertising market. So that's companies out there that want you to buy stuff, and they are willing to give money to social media platforms to put their ads in the platforms to try to get you to buy it. And all of their money together is going to be about $250 billion. And Snapchat, Instagram, Twitter, they're all competing for your eyeballs because they want those ads, they want the advertisers to use them. In 2015, it was estimated that it costs $7 to $8 million a day to run Facebook, and that was 1 billion users ago. So it's probably much higher now, but that money has to come from somewhere. We're not paying; we're the free users, and so it comes from the advertisers. And Facebook and all social media apps, VSCO included, they measure much of their success based on how many people spend how much time per day on the platform. And so there's different kind of acronyms that are common in the industry. So we say there's the MAU, that's the monthly active user. Having a lot of those is good. And like I said earlier, VSCO has 40 million monthly active users worldwide. But then if you can move people from a MAU to a WOW, a weekly active user, well, that's better. That's more engagement, that's more eyeballs, that's all of that. But then if you can move even more people from a WOW to a DAO, a daily active user, well, now we're really getting somewhere. Now we got some serious in-app time that we can put ads in front of you. And so they are measuring these things meticulously. What VSCO does, all the companies do. And remember when I said earlier that Facebook reported that they had their average user spending 50 minutes a day, and those users were logging in 76% every day? They're tracking these things very, very carefully because that's their business. Their customers are the advertisers, right? So they have to be able to say to the advertisers, hey, if you put your ad on our platform, this is the kind of engagement that you're going to get. This is how much time the average user spends, looking at an ad. This is how many people that we have. All of these things, and so these metrics are crucial to them because this is their business. And so, what you need to understand is that for social media companies, you're not really the customer. You get to use the tool, and it's a great tool, but the customer that this is all for is the advertisers. They're the one paying the millions of dollars a day to keep the doors open in all these companies. You're more like the product. Going back to the screwdriver analogy, you're a bit more of the screw than the person using the screwdriver. So it's important to understand that. And I'm not just like crazy guy ranting. There are current events going on about this. Instagram is currently testing hiding like counts in Canada. And then that test was recently just expanded to other countries. And the UK, the government is considering banning what they call nudge techniques for anyone under 18. So likes, Snapchat streaks, all that kind of stuff. Anything that would encourage anybody under 18 to keep using the app more, they're considering banning that. And even in our country, there's a senator in Missouri who has proposed a new bill that would limit the same kind of tactics. And he says that tech has embraced the model of addiction. Too much of the innovation in this space, he says, is designed not to create better products, but to capture more attention by using psychological tricks that make it difficult to look away. And even Android, I just read this a few days ago. The next version of Android has a focus mode, which is built to help you not overuse apps. That's pretty much what they're billing it as. Like, it's going to help you control yourself on all these things. And so the tech industry, the social media industry, they're aware of all these things, and they are doing things to try and help, but it's contrary to their business to help really with this stuff. Like, if they get a bunch of people to go from spending 50 minutes a day to 25 minutes a day, like their stock is just going to, like that's their lifeline. And so probably more likely they're trying to figure out, okay, how do we don't want to be the bad guy. We don't want to look bad. So let's figure out like how to, bring some of this stuff down, but then like what's the least we can do it to where we're still making as much money as possible, because they have shareholders and a lot of people that they're responsible to keep that number going up. And just one last thing, since it's a tech talk, got to do one more thing. Social media also has a tremendous influence on us. I mean, there's even the term influencer that's become very well known. The people that you follow, the things in your feed, even the news that you see in your feed, and we've all become aware of fake news and all these things, it has a tremendous influence on us. And the things that the people that you follow are saying or don't follow, it can all influence you. You need to be mindful of just what you're putting in front of yourself. But then also the structure of the whole like machine, so to speak, is ads, right? So they're tracking what you click on, what you like, what groups you're in, maybe even like what friends you have, the demographic that you're in, the part of the country you're in, your gender, all these things, and they're trying to get the best possible ads in front of you so that maybe you'll convert and spend some money. And so they're not going to put like a like camo knife or something in front of all you women. It's going to be like a cute dress or whatever, like something that you clicked on that you're going to be like, ooh, I do like that. And it creates this kind of distorted reality where you're constantly seeing the things that you've looked at already, or the things that you could be interested in, and it can easily make you discontent with the things that you have, with the friends that you have, with kind of the state of your life. But it's completely artificial because they're literally trying to get you to buy things. And then also, there's becoming some issues with beauty standards and even gender identity kind of agendas. There's a really fascinating study that was done where a photographer took a picture of some teenage girls against a white background with no makeup on. He took this picture and then he put it on their phones and he said, edit this until you think it's ready for social media, like that you would post it. And the results were stunning. I mean, look at this girl. Her nose got smaller, her lips got bigger, her eyes got bigger, the shape of her chin got like narrower. And there's actually been articles written about how now we have women coming into plastic surgery centers, basically holding a picture of themselves from Facetune or Snapchat or whatever, telling the doctor like, I want to look like this. And it's like a tragic problem, especially for you women. Like the ads that you're seeing are usually filled with very beautiful people because they want you to buy that thing and it looks really nice. And then also, because we want those likes and the comments and everything, many people are doing these kinds of edits to themselves, and then you see that on everybody else and you want to measure up. You don't want to be the ugly duckling. And so you're doing that, and there becomes this kind of circular problem where everybody is sort of making everybody else reach this certain bar, but then you look in the mirror and you don't look like that. That's not who you look like. And yeah, like those studies we were talking about earlier, you feel depressed, you feel lonely, you feel isolated, because like you can't. That's not the shape of your chin. That's not the shape of your nose. Like, that's not who you are. You can't do that. And a lot of especially Snapchat, many of the lenses, by default, are applying skin smoothing and changing shapes of things. And some of that's like part of the fun of it and all, but it's challenging the standards and just the way that you're thinking of yourself. And then also, like, Snapchat right now has this gender swapping filter. This is me as a woman, which is hilarious. Um, but it's also kind of promoting this fluid gender agenda kind of conversation that's going on. They're not just this like neutral third party that's just like, post whatever you want. They have things that they want to get out there and promote, and they're doing that in their own app, and it's kind of promoting this conversation, and even in people's minds, like, oh, I look pretty good as a woman, or I look kind of interesting as a man, and maybe I want to be a man, and gender is fluid, and all this. So, and obviously, like, the Word of God has some things to say about that, and that's not what we want to be conformed to. And so, what is transforming you? Is it God's Word? Is it the in real life community of believers that you have? Or could it be that social media and the many hours that you might be spending on there every day is conforming you to its image more? And I just want to ask a few questions, just to kind of like ask yourself. Do you feel the urge to use social media more and more? Like, has your usage of it gone up over time? Do you use social media to forget about your personal problems? Like, when you have a rough day or something kind of rough happens, do you just kind of turn to social media and like scroll and just kind of zone out? Can you have a conversation without pulling out your phone? Do you often try to reduce your use of social media without success? When I'm using this thing too much. Like, I need to do something with my life, but it doesn't really work out, and you stay there. Do you become restless or troubled if you can't use social media? You have no signal or whatever, or if you can't find your phone. Do you use it so much that it has a negative impact on your job or your studies? This thing is consuming, on average, probably 2 to 6 years of your life in the next 50 years, and if you're answering yes to some of these questions, it's pretty much you're addicted to some degree to social media. And the Bible says that each of us will give an account of himself to God or herself. So we need to be wise. We need to be mindful about how we're doing these things. So some suggestions on what to do. If you're tracking with me, if you're not just completely tuned out, the Bible says, or actually that verse that we've hit a few times, let me read the whole thing with the verse preceding. It says, I appeal to you, therefore, brothers, by the mercy of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what the will of God, or what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. So we are to present ourselves as a sacrifice of worship to the Lord, which, sacrifice can be painful. And so the kind of the big question with this thing is, do we reject it? Do we just completely passively receive it? Or do we redeem it somehow? And faith is going to get much more into this. But I just want to hit a few things. A lot of the when we talk about redeeming, a lot of times we kind of look to these like little Band-Aid kind of ideas. If you Google like how to use social media less, you'll get this kind of stuff. It's like turn off notifications. There's self-control apps. You can just delete the app and only use it on the desktop if that's a possibility. Maybe put the phone in another room, or create some rules like I'm only going to use it this much per day or at this time. And that's all good. But that's essentially asking the question, well, how can I do social media better? Obviously, I'm going to be on there, so how do I not be so bad? And I want to submit to you that that's the wrong question. The right question is, what am I called by God to do? Like, God has made you, He's placed you here, He's given you talents and gifts and abilities and relationships and opportunities. What is God calling you to do with your life? And how is social media a part of that work? Social media is a very powerful tool that we get to use. So how do you use the tool and not be used by the tool? And what are you doing? And so just some suggestions, if you're feeling like maybe I am addicted to social media, what do I do? Here's what I would suggest. Take a fast from social media. I know, gasp. But if you're addicted, you can't even really know how much this thing has grabbed a hold of your life. It's really helpful to just completely shut it off and take a break for a little while. I would recommend 30 days, just for common reasons. But figure out for yourself what that time is. In that time, seek the Lord about His purpose for your life, and pray. There's many wise women in this room. Seek godly counsel. Read the Word. Also, spend more time with people, like actually spending time with them. have them over for dinner, go out to coffee, go do something, whatever you like to do with your friends, but do something in real life. I recently had this moment with one of my friends where he told me that he was engaged, and pretty much everybody else knew because they read it on Instagram, but I didn't. And we had this great moment where it was like, oh my gosh, you got engaged. That's so amazing. And there was this like communication in real life kind of thing that we had that was so great. And it was so much better than or, like, oh, congratulations. It was body language. It was my smile. It was his smile. It was like the excitement of that moment together, me discovering that he was engaged. And that can happen in real life in ways, the Lord has built us as social beings, but as physical beings, not just word beings. And so try hanging out in real life more. And then after the fast, after you kind of have a sense for what you feel like the Lord's calling you to do, re-engage with social media strategically to help you with that purpose. And even if that purpose is just, I want to catch up, or I want to be able to keep in touch with my friends that I don't see anymore, or Susan from college, or whatever it is, that's awesome. But you probably don't need, 142 minutes a day to do that. So figure out what is a reasonable amount of time for you to do the task that you want to do with social media, and then kind of set some boundaries for yourself. So is that 10 minutes a day? Is that 30, whatever, but come up with a number that you feel comfortable giving your time to for that reason, and use the tool. Don't let the tool use you. And at the very least, before your next session, just ask yourself, why am I posting this? Why am I giving time to this app? What am I hoping is going to happen by being here? What would happen if I didn't post, or if I didn't check the app? And who is this post for? Like, what good am I trying to do? If nobody responded, if I got no likes, no comments, nothing, would I still want to post this? Do I feel so strongly about it? Or could it be that you're just kind of looking for some personal validation? And also, how is this going to affect other people? Are you kind of just bragging about your great life, your great husband, your great kids, your great vacation? Are you showing your highlight reel that's going to make people kind of feel bad about their behind the scenes? Not that it's bad to post things about your life, but what's your heart in this, and how is this going to help people? The Word of God says in Ephesians, be careful how you live. Don't live like fools. Live like those who are wise. Make the most of every opportunity in these evil days. Don't act thoughtlessly, but understand what the Lord wants you to do. So again, understand what the Lord wants you to do. Be wise. Live wisely in this world. And just for personal, for myself, I have actually pretty much gotten off social media. Even though I work at Visco, I don't have social media for the most part. And I just want to throw this out there. Don't totally reject the idea of rejecting it. It's not for everybody, and I may not even do it forever. But Jesus said, if your right eye causes you to sin, tear it out, throw it away. If your right hand, right eye, it's better that you lose one of your members than that your whole body go into hell. And then John says, dear children, keep away from anything that might take God's place in your heart. And for me personally, I've gone around the carousel so many times, and I finally just realized I just can't control this thing. Every time I get back into it, I end up spending way too much time, and it does more harm than good for me. So for this season at least, my wife and I both have separately made this decision. We don't have you can't add me on Facebook because I'm just not there. I'm not hiding from you all or something. For me, that's been actually really nice, and it's enabled me to do things like have a full-time job and run the worship ministry. And then lastly, for you parents, for your kids, we have dosage for things like Tylenol and for Motrin, and we read these dosage charts carefully with weight in milliliters and age and all these things, and we're very careful about that. And even for things like front-facing car seats, rides, all the things that you can and can't do when you turn 18, and then being able to drink when you're 21. There's restrictions for things based on maturity, and yet for addictive technology, we're just kind of I don't know. And I mean, this is my son, so I'm certainly I'm shaming my own self. But what I do want you to hear as parents is don't use your phone or YouTube or social media or anything as a pacifier. Don't use it just to shut them up And I know, woo, It's so tempting sometimes. But be intentional about how you're doing these things. I like to tell my kids that phones are like knives. They can do wonderful things. They can cut and prepare food. They can create tools. You can be creative with them. You know, if you're stuck in it, being able to cut yourself can actually save your life. But you can also really, really hurt other people and hurt yourself even accidentally with a knife. And so I'm extremely careful with how my kids use knives. And I'm also extremely careful with how they use phones. And so I'm like with them, and I'm not just giving them a phone completely unrestricted and sending them off to their rooms by themselves. And one of the big questions that we as parents ask is, when is it okay? When should we give our kids these things? The average kid gets a phone at 10. I'm not saying that's right. That's just average. 50% of 12-year-olds have a social media account. But it's interesting when you look at what the kind of upper class of people in the tech space who are parents do. Bill Gates, he wouldn't give his kids a smartphone until they were 14. Steve Jobs, when the iPad was released, he didn't give his own kids an iPad. He said, we limit how much technology our kids use at home, which is crazy. I literally actually just had a conversation with a coworker today who has worked at Visco for quite a while, and he was saying the same thing. He doesn't want to give his kids a phone too early because, like, we on the other side of the curtain, we see a lot more things. So be mindful about when to give your kids access to these things. And part of the reasoning is that their brains aren't finished developing. The prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that helps you like make decisions and, you know, not be an idiot in social situations, it's not done developing until you're like 25. So obviously you can't hold off that long. Good luck with that. But be mindful. And also, the average age of pornography exposure is 11. And I think it's no coincidence that average age kid gets a phone at 10, and then kind of within that year, they get exposed to pornography. And so you need to be mindful of that as well. And just educate yourself, educate your children so that, you know, they're all bought in together with you and they're equipped so that when they leave the house, they're not just like, woo, I can do whatever I want. Like, so that they can engage in this world that is, you know, so deeply functioning through these things healthily. And Faith is going to talk about that. At the very least, set some boundaries. Not too many hours of screen time. American, you know, look it up. I'm running out of time here. But, you know, maybe come up with a family media use plan, like how much time or when are we going to, you know, what apps. Come up with a plan together, and then maybe come up with some boundaries, like no phones in the bedroom, or no phones in the bedroom by yourself after 6 o'clock or whatever. And then especially for parents of younger kids, there are like tremendously powerful parental controls that you can set to control things like installing apps or how much time you get on apps or things like that. And you really should be using those to protect your kids. So that's pretty much all I got. Just remember, social media, it is a tool. It's a very powerful tool, but it's also a tool that uses you, and it wants to use you for its business needs. So don't be passive consumers. Let's be conformed not to this world, but be transformed by the Lord. And that's all I got. Faith is going to continue where I left off.
All right, let's just get started. What does social media look like now, knowing all those things of amazing information that Zach shared with us? What does it look like now in practice as followers and apprentices of Jesus Christ? How do we redeem and invade this medium for the sake of the gospel? And that's pretty much what I want to go over tonight. And I'm going to ask 2 questions. And you can write these questions down because these are very helpful on social media, off social media, whatever you do, at work, whatever. But the first question is, who am I becoming? Who am I becoming with the things that I do and say, how I treat others, how I spend my time? When I do these things, who am I becoming when I'm doing them? Second question, who are we becoming collectively? Who are we becoming together as a generation, as a community of faith? Who are we becoming by how we're interacting with one another? Now keep those questions in mind. Save it for later. Save a piece of that corn for later. Save it for later. And, here's the third question. Who is she? My name's Faith. I'm Faith Wake. I'm 28 years old, which makes me a millennial. Hey, millennials in the house. I'm married to Thales J. Wake III. He's not here. No, oh, there he is, right there. You're not a woman. What are you doing in here? Well, there's a couple dudes in here. Anyways, we've been married for 3 years. I give us 90 years tops. I think we're doing pretty good. I'm a worship leader, and I also work as a graphic designer, a freelance graphic designer, and social media manager or consultant. I help a lot of churches, especially church plants, and nonprofit organizations mostly, and help them to strategize how to tell their story. Not necessarily like, how do we manipulate people to go to your church? It's more of like, how do we tell your story on social media and just reflect what God's doing through your ministry, and that's been really fun. I'm what you would consider a third culture kid. I'm a part of a sociological phenomenon that means that I was raised in different countries than my country of origin. And so when you ask me where I'm from, I don't know. I'm equal parts from the Middle East, from California, and the Philippines. I've spent a lot of time in all those places. And my family always loved and served Jesus wherever we went. My parents have always loved the Lord for as long as I know anything. They've just loved Jesus so much. And they showed me the importance of connection and community worldwide. No matter where you are, the body of Christ is the same. It's really cool. We sing a lot of the same songs. We do a lot of the same things. And that's something that made me really think. I think I was supposed to be an introvert. But because of traveling and because of being at a different school every school year, I had to learn how to make friends. And it was so hard. It was so hard because you have different languages, you have different cultural contexts, and all these different things happening. And through living in these different cultural contexts, and by the guidance and discipleship of my parents, God taught me how to make friends and to be myself, which was actually really an introvert, but also be intentional, learn how to learn people's names, like, hi, my name's Faith. And then my mom's like, speak from your gut. And like, hi, my name's Faith. What's your name? Let's be friends. And then I would make actual intentional friendships with people, knowing full well that I may actually be moving at the end of the school year. You know, so that comes with a lot of heartbreak and a lot of sadness. And just the thought that I may never see my friends ever again. And I would get really sad. And then this happened. Anyone know what this is? Anyone getting PTSD from the sound of dial-up? I actually have a sound bite of dial-up, but I don't think we tested it or anything. But dial-up happened. The internet happened. I can now instantly communicate with all of my friends all over the world that I've met. All these people that I've built deep friendships with, we can continue our friendship online every now and then, sometimes, unless I have to use the phone, in which case I can't use the phone at the same time as the internet, which is interesting because now we need the internet to use our phones. Think about that. That's so crazy to me. Anyone know AOL? Anyone had a instant? Yes, AOL. I think my username was Macchiato5. Starbucks also just started and had one. They had one in Abu Dhabi at the time, but it's super lame. So social media at this point then opened the door for me to keep and sustain these meaningful friendships that I've made over the years. And praise the Lord, we've come a long way since dial-up. Things are a little bit more intense. Well, now 3.2 billion people this year, this is a survey from this year, that's 42% of the population, can now be reached through social media. That's intense. That's a lot. And you know what's really interesting? What countries do you think are the highest, have the highest users and the majority of users on social media? Let's just throw it out there. What do you think? The US, maybe? I heard China. You know what's crazy? It's mostly the Philippines, India, a lot in India. A lot of mostly third world countries with first world sensibilities. Yes, China and Korea and all these places, but a lot of these places, and I believe the U.S. falls more at number 20. We're not number 1, which is something, and it's a whole other conversation. But anyways, we're not number 1. Crazy. And so that being said, with all these, there's more people than us in the world that use it. That's so crazy. So let's realize that the internet is a gateway to the world. There's this endless reach that we have, especially if you have unlimited data. That's literally unlimited reach to the ends of the world, and that's crazy. we can now send a message to the ends of the earth. And it reminds me of what Paul said in Romans, and he said in Romans 1:8, "First, I thank my God through Jesus Christ for you all, because your faith is being proclaimed throughout the whole world." Now, why did Paul say this to the Christians in Rome? If you know about Roman history, it's one of my favorite eras. At this point, all roads led to Rome. It was during this time called the Pax Romana, which was this 200-year span of peace that happened in Rome, which was so perfect for the coming of the Messiah. Because at this point, there's all these roads because of commerce, because of technological advancements. It was like when they created concrete, basically. And now there's all these roads that can be used to send messages, to do, barters and all these things. But also, the Roman roads literally paved the way for the apostles to take the gospel from Jerusalem to Judea, Samaria, to the ends of the earth. And now let's fast forward to 1844. The first instant message was sent by Samuel Morse, and he is the inventor of the Morse code. Well done, well done, well done. And this is what he sent. This was the first instant message ever. "What hath God wrought?" We don't talk like that anymore. But just so you know, it's from Numbers 23:23. And different translations say, "What wonders God has done." Like, look at God. Or be like, "Look at God go," basically how we would say it. Now it's like, look at God. Look at what he's done. What hath God wrought? All technology we hold in the palm of our hand is all thanks to our brother in Christ, Samuel Morse, who actually invented the Morse code for a very sad reason. He got a letter from his father who told him, "Hey, your wife is dying, but unfortunately, by the time you get this letter, she will probably already be dead. So you don't even have to worry about coming back. You don't have to rush back home." And that devastated him, and that's how he, wheels turned, and then he got into the communications industry, and he invented Morse code. Really, really crazy. Now, speaking of instant messaging, that brings us now to social media. And this is the definition that I prayed over because, like Zach, I know social media is not just a tool. It's much more than that. I say social media is a medium, a worldwide highway of conversation that I believe has the sacred potential of being used by followers of Jesus to carry the message of the gospel. I personally believe that we've entered a technological Pax Romana in a way, where we have these roads that don't just lead to Rome, but they lead to everywhere. And I also believe that the Apostle Paul would have thrived in this kind of environment for the sake of the gospel, but he's not here right now. So now there's us, the church. And the whole world now sits in the palm of our hand. And it's a lot. It's a lot to take in. So how have we been handling it? Well, there's two ways that we can handle it, and there's two ways that many of us have decided to handle it. And there's two ways that the Lord even leads us to handle it. Number one is to engage, and the other side is to disengage. You're either on social media or you're off social media. Just remember and know that neither are wrong, and neither are more right than the other. One's not better than the other. Because, the Lord has created us with different levels of conscience and even our propensity towards temptation or propensity towards addiction and all these things puts us in either camp. But where I believe we both can go wrong is when we engage so much in social media that we lose touch of reality. We lose touch of that. We become awkward in real life. We lose our identity because we get this awesome opportunity to construct who we are online and fake our way through. There's something that Mark Sayers calls ambient anxiety that's happening in this generation right now because we are hyper aware of everything happening right now. You get news of someone being mad about cultural appropriation, to news about chemical warfare, to news of Taylor Swift's very mediocre album, to a mass shooting, and these kids are getting that second by second, and they're becoming anxious, And that ambient anxiety just looms over. And so when you're too engaged with social media, that could happen. You lose touch of reality and you just get super anxious, and it leads to hyper individualism and, as Zach said, loneliness. There's been a crazy rise of one person household worldwide. There's something called loner culture now in Japan that's happening, it's sweeping the nation, and no one knows how to interact with each other. Really crazy. Anyways, number 2, we can disengage so much that we choose to not understand. You can choose to remove yourself, but then also remove yourself in a very unhealthy way that you become cynical, you lose compassion for others, and you even lose touch with the generation that you're called to disciple. Go back to engage. We can engage so much that we dehumanize people online because we're looking at a screen and it's kind of impersonal, and we think we can say whatever we want, and we're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna say this, it's no big deal. But then it's devastating to the person on the other side. So we dehumanize people just because they're on a screen. Or we can disengage so much that we demonize what God is actually possibly using for the sake of his gospel. So whether you're online or offline, I want you guys to ask yourself this first question: who am I becoming? Who am I becoming? Oh, yeah, who am I becoming? Back up. Am I becoming more like Jesus in this area of stewardship of the gospel that he's given me, offline or online? Am I becoming more like Jesus in this area of stewardship of the gospel that he's given me, offline or online? All right, I'm going to say something. Take it or leave it. Social media is not the bad guy. Agree, disagree? You don't have to show me. Just social media is not the bad guy. True or false? You don't have to say it, so you don't embarrass yourself. Okay, it's not. Social media is not the bad guy. Okay, if social media is not the bad guy, who is the bad guy? And now, this we can answer. Who's the bad guy? Oh, she's like, this guy. Satan, yeah, definitely Satan. But more, this guy. I'm the bad guy, said Billie Eilish. Young William Eilish knew that I am the bad guy. It's my own depravity, my own wicked heart that is so bent on glorifying myself and overindulging on things that don't matter. And the social media machine knows it, and they capitalize on it, and they hark on it. It's crazy is that the social media machine knows more about you than you probably know about you. So crazy. So it's my own depravity. Yeah, the enemy is the worst. We can all agree upon that. We all agree upon that. The enemy is the worst. And we blame him and the system way too much, though, because it's time for us to take responsibility for our own depravity and our own idol factories, as John Calvin calls our hearts. Our hearts are idol factories. We produce idols out of the randomest things. It's so crazy. And so let's take responsibility for that. And so from there, who am I becoming? So let this be a time of confession for all of us, with one another, with the Lord, as we get down to the nitty-gritty of why you're on social media. So specifically in regards to social media, I'm going to post a series of verses and quotes and thoughts to guide us through this conversation and this confession together that we're having with the Lord. So Genesis 1:27. God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. And this is so important because every human being is made in the image of God. Amen? Yes. And we'll call it the Imago Dei because that's what it is in Latin, and it sounds really cool. The Imago Dei. On social media, there are real people on the other end. People are having actual conversations. The person behind that very liberal article that has like a really bad agenda, that person is still made in the image of God. Crazy, right? All the trolls, the angry activists, the influencers, the TikTokers, these people, these souls, no matter how old or how young they are made in the image of God. And screens do make us feel very distant from them, and we just throw out words like they're nothing. But as we'll learn in the book of James, that our words can bring life or they can bring death. So just remember that there's an actual conversation being had. Even if that person is just throwing away words, they're still a person. Whether they say something or not, and especially if they're non-believers, they don't know any better. We know better. We carry a better story, and that's the gospel. And we get to help them see that the image of God that they're carrying can be repaired and redeemed and turned for the sake of the gospel. So make sure that we don't dehumanize or demonize people online. Just be careful. But also be very wise, meaning like don't let everyone in the world into your circle. You don't have to share your whole life and then like, look at my child, he was just born, and all the time. But although you can, just be wise. Don't just let anyone in, because there are people there are people who have a propensity towards evil, like all of us. And you want to just be very wise with that. So, who am I becoming by how I interact with my fellow Imago Dei? Colossians 4:5 says, conduct yourselves with wisdom towards outsiders, making the most of the opportunity. We're going to use the word outsiders, and I don't mean that to make unbelievers sound like the other. They're not the other. It's just people who are the outside and who either want to be a part of what's inside or they're just fine with being on the outside of the church. So as a follower of Jesus, how can I, as Paul says, conduct myself with wisdom on social media? And here's the answer. Approach each platform as if you're interacting with outsiders. Each platform that you're on, Facebook, Instagram, whatever it is that you're called to, or even if you're just at work in real life, approach each platform that you have as if you're interacting with outsiders. Know that the internet is just one big room. Everyone's having a conversation together, and there will always be outsiders in the room, listening to what you're saying, seeing the articles that you're posting, and all that jazz. And here's the thing, too. We often feel before we think. So when we see something that angers us, we just feel angry. And sometimes before thinking, we're just like, ah, and we start typing away, or, and we want to share, like, can you believe this? Or comment really quickly at it, usually outside of context, and that gets us in trouble. It does something to our witness to people online. And yeah, social media shouldn't be the main thing in your life, but to some people it is. And when you're misrepresenting the Lord, oftentimes it causes people to get turned off, even with that. So conduct yourself with wisdom towards outsiders. We're also entering to a time that's called cancel culture. Anyone know what that is? Cancel culture. The whole idea is if you do something wrong, you're canceled. Like cancel so-and-so, because they'll bring up something that they tweeted or said, a soundbite from 15 years ago, and be like, remember this one thing you said? You are canceled today because of something you said 15 years ago. So that just goes to show that there's a lot that has to do with the words that we say. People are listening. Outsiders are listening. And as followers of Jesus Christ, how can we conduct ourselves with wisdom towards that? And the second part of the verse, so cool. Make the most of the opportunity. As a creative, I'm a graphic designer. I'm an artist. How I see we can make the most of the opportunity in this cultural moment of social media is to make beautiful things. Make beautiful stuff. Take really nice pictures. If you're going to post a verse, this is just purely aesthetic at this point for me, but if you're going to post a verse and it's like a really blurry, pixely photo, sometimes I look at that and I'm like, I can't even read it. And it's, just side note suggestion, if you want to post a verse and you're like, Faith, does this graphic look okay? And if it doesn't look okay, I'll remake it for you so you can glorify the Lord better if it looks better, right? Young people, you see your parents kind of like repost something and you're like, oh no, that's so bad. It's like a silhouette of a soldier and you're like, oh no, but he can't even see it because it's blurry. You're like, oh no, Mom, please. Like, it's a great verse, but it's like kind of cringy a little bit. Make beautiful stuff. We blame Hollywood. We're like, Hollywood is poisoning my children. What do I do? Like, Travis Scott, why? Like, all these rappers, like, why? Why are you listening to them? Because it's good. The movies are so good. Everything's beautiful, right? Okay, yeah, music videos, like, wow, this is a really good music video. But it's kind of really bad, But the things that people are making today are so attractive looking. Not because it's bad, just because it looks good doesn't mean it's bad. It's just like they do things well and with excellence. Why is it so hard for Christian art to be excellent? Sometimes it's garbage. I'm so sorry. Sometimes it's so bad. I watch some of these movies, and I'm not going to name any but sometimes I watch these Christian movies, and I'm like, oh my gosh, just take me back to VeggieTales. VeggieTales was like the pinnacle of Christian art excellence. Honestly, it's coming back too, by the way. I'm so excited. I think we peaked at VeggieTales, honestly, sadly. But let's make beautiful things, guys. We have the Creator. We have the Creator of the universe as our main source of influence, and we have a direct line to who He is, and we get to be intimate with the Creator of the universe, and He can be the one who inspires us to make amazing, beautiful art for the sake of the gospel. That's it. I mean, there's more I can say about that, but that's a whole other thing. So, who am I becoming by how I witness to outsiders? Glenn Packham said something that was so moving, and I had to take a walk with this. Faith in Jesus is deeply personal but never private. When you're brought into the fold of God, you experience a personal encounter with the Word become flesh, Jesus, who communicated God's love for you, right? And as redemption has it, it doesn't actually just stop there. It doesn't stop just with your justification, but we are now a part of a collective body of Christ, right? So cool. We get to be sanctified together. Sometimes it's the worst, but it's also really fun to be sanctified. And we edify one another, we exhort each other, and the sanctification process is so beautiful because we're a community now made one, though very diverse individually, made one in Jesus. That being said, you're not just saved for you. You're not just saved for yourself. You're also saved to fit as an important and precious member of the body of Christ. No matter what your skill set is, or even how much you feel like you can't contribute to anything, you are still an important and precious member of the body of Christ. So, when your faith in Jesus is deeply personal and it's never private, that means that we are a part of a spiritual nervous system where if one part of us hurts, we all hurt. Have you been through that? If one of us is in sin, you feel that heaviness altogether. If some of us are going through a time of rejoicing, we all rejoice together. If we sorrow, we all sorrow together. If one part of the body is going through something, we experience it together. And it's inevitably felt by all of us. Now, on social media, this is how we apply it. Your testimony will show inevitably in what you post. Yes, even if all your profiles are private. Your faith in Jesus that is deeply personal cannot help but be shown in public by what you post, how you react, the memes you relate to, the people you at, things you retweet, the things you repost, all that stuff. It cannot help but show. It's never private, not necessarily by choice. It just can't help, but the truth just comes out of where you are with the Lord. So, I'm not saying that everything you should do, we should be like, praise the Lord. God has just been so good to me. And but then, no, if you want to post that, picture of a donut and be like, I freaking love this donut. Sorry, I don't think I can say that word. But I really love this donut. Then post it. If you like donuts, post about donuts. And then inevitably your love for Jesus will also show. You don't also have to be like, manna from heaven. You don't have to Christianize it and make it super cringy. You can if you're like me and you love that stuff. But just walk out authentically who you are with the Lord, and it cannot help but show. And that's also a sobering thought for us. Let's remember that, too. It's not just all awesome things, because sometimes my friend will post a meme about her being sad, and I'm like, this is funny and all, but are you okay? And then I'll be texting her or calling her, and she'll be like, actually, I'm not. Thank you for noticing. I just mask it with memes. If you don't know what a meme is, it's just anything that's viral, anything that goes viral that has a funny caption that's relatable. That's what a meme is. Anyways, that's on the side. But as you walk out your apprenticeship with Jesus, this identity in Christ that you have will not help but show in your social media presence. So who am I becoming as I share my story? Who are we becoming? Question number 2. Who are we becoming as a generation, and who are we becoming as a community of faith? Here are the social platforms that Gen Z is checking on a daily basis right now. You can read it for yourself. So, as Zach covered, Gen Z, anyone born from 1996 to the present. Isn't it crazy that a lot of the youngins that graduated from high school were born in 2000? That's so intense to me. That's so crazy. That's so great. I'm like, what? 2000? Okay. Anyways, Gen Z is the first truly digital generation. Isn't that nuts? That's so crazy. But that being said, they are connected and exposed to everything in real time, as I said a while ago, which makes them a very observant generation. They are getting so much information all at once that they're overwhelmed and they just watch. So they're watching you, but also they're checking all these things. And sometimes all these things, if we're not doing the job of discipleship, these different apps are informing how they view the world. And that ambient anxiety starts to take hold. So that's why they check all these different things, because they're so anxious and they're just looking for a different story to calm their anxiety. So I want to ask, are we discipling this generation more than these apps are? Are we setting an example of online etiquette worthy of the gospel? Or are we just posting political tirades? Are we excluding the outsider by the things that we're saying? Are we joining their conversation, Gen Z's conversation, to help them interpret the world around them through the lens of Scripture? These are things that I don't know the answers to this. You alone can answer where you're at. But whether you're in ministry, ministering to these young people, or if you're a parent to any of these young people, just ask these questions before the Lord, like, Lord, what am I doing? Am I discipling my young person more than these apps are? Am I setting an example online? If they're also online with me, do they only see me posting these things? And do I know their language in this conversation that they're having? And can I help them interpret the world around them more than these things can? So who are we becoming together as this generation? If you're alive today, whether you're 2 or 102 years old, you are this generation. We're not all Gen Z, but we're all alive right now. So who are we becoming together? And are we fulfilling that mission of discipleship that the Lord has set before us? 2 Corinthians 2:14. But thanks be to God who in Christ always leads us in triumphal procession, and through us spreads the fragrance of the knowledge of him everywhere. The world right now wants the kingdom without the king. And what I mean by that is that the world today, the ideologies that are in place right now, the progressive, means that they're progressing towards something. They want to progress towards a utopia, a perfect world. And here's the thing, but they don't want it with Jesus in the picture. And that's impossible. And you're like, where is this coming from? Why do they want utopia? Well, us who are in the fold, us who are insiders to the gospel, know that the kingdom is coming. And Jesus says the kingdom is here. And he's written eternity in all of our hearts. If you're an Imago Dei, if you are made in the image of God, you have eternity written in your heart. So there is a sense of utopia that is written on your heart that you're like, things aren't right now, but things need to be right. And you know that, but like, okay, well, we'll do a bunch of marches to make it better. We're going to protest this, and we're Antifa that, and we're going to this, and then do all these things, and campaign for this. Because they're trying to progress, but trying to progress without the king. They want this perfect kingdom without the king. And this triumphal procession that they're trying to have is not very triumphal at all. It's just a procession. It's a march that leads to nowhere. Not to say those things aren't okay or those things aren't legitimizing a lot of the hurt that a lot of women are going through, but we carry a better triumphal march, don't we, as believers? We carry the gospel with us, and this story is so much better. This narrative that we carry is the actual reality of how the world works, is that we have the gospel that can lead us into a triumphal procession that actually ends with a kingdom, and a kingdom that is coming, and a kingdom that is here. And so Mark Sayers, who's one of my favorite people in the world, Mark Sayers said, we need followers of Jesus to be a non-anxious presence in this cultural moment. And I think about that, about like the fragrance of Christ and the fragrance of the knowledge of Christ. Christ was a non-anxious presence. I'll repeat that. We need followers of Jesus to be a non-anxious presence in this cultural moment. Christ was a non-anxious presence, meaning he engaged with the world in a way that was very meek. But also, if there were times that he had to turn tables, he would. He knew that there were times that for him to react to things that weren't okay. But there were also moments where he knew when to retreat. Jesus displayed a calm and present rhythm of engagement and retreat, just in and out. and his yoke is easy and his burden is light, and he desires that for us. I'm not saying that this is not to say about people with mental illness who actually really struggle with anxiety and all these things. That's a thorn in the flesh that I believe that the Lord wants to use for the sake of his gospel, and that's a real reality for a lot of people. But I'm talking more about the attitude and our outlook towards the things that are happening in this world, that we are to be knowing that, like, wow, this stuff is really bad, but I'm a non-anxious presence because I know the end. I know the triumphal procession that I'm a part of. And his yoke is easy, his burden is light. We get to carry this fragrance of Christ, this non-anxious presence, knowing that we have a victorious reality. So, who are we becoming with the presence that we carry? Whose presence are we carrying? Am I carrying my own? Because that's not going to go well. Let's carry the presence of Christ, that non-anxious presence. And this is the last thing I want to go over is Hebrews 10:14 through 15. Let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together, as is the habit of some, sadly, but encourage one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near. I want to preface this by saying that nothing replaces weekly gathering as believers on Sunday mornings and Saturday nights. This is what this verse is speaking to. Don't neglect that. That face-to-face, doing life together as the church together is so important. When we come to the table, we break bread, we fellowship, we worship, sing in doxologies, make a confession together, glorify God. All these things, these proclamations that we make on a weekly basis is so important. So don't neglect that. I'm not saying, anyways, I don't know what I'm not saying. Forget it. Never mind. So there's that. That's what the context of that is. But applying this to social media, I want to ask, and this is a little bit of a touchy subject because we're, especially in this generation of Tinder and all that stuff, but can true community come from social media? Can social media help spur on true community? You don't have to answer because I don't want you to feel bad. I say yes, just because I've seen it as a testimony of my own life. I've seen it happen in real time, in real life, and I've had the privilege of making a lot of lifelong friendships through social media. And like I explained before, social media was a way for me to keep up with these lifelong friendships that I had, but I learned that I can actually make friends and actually make meaningful friendships that can point people to Jesus and glorify him. So I joined Instagram at the end of 2010. My affinity for connection and community via the internet continued when I got my iPhone. And my parents were always really amazing of just being that like fear of God in my life to like use this for the Lord, use this for the Lord. I'm like, okay, I don't know how, but okay. I started to host things called Instameets, and it's an Instameet kit. Also, Zach, I don't know if you noticed that the majority of these things are made with Visco. Haven't edited with Visco. Back in the day, I didn't do this one. This is like hyper saturated. That's not me, I promise. Like me as a photographer, I'm like, that's not me, I promise. But I started hosting Instameets. At first, only my friends came, and it's okay. What Instameets are is that I'd be like, hey, everyone who follows me, if you care, I'm going to be at this place at this time, and we're just going to go meet up and take photos. That's it. And people would show up. Well, first it was just my friends. And eventually it grew a little bit. I found out some people were driving from like Rancho Cucamonga to like San Diego, or from east and they would come west. This photo that says, here we are in this moment together, was taken by someone who attended one of our Instameets. And I started to notice that it wasn't just believers showing up, although a lot of them were, but a lot of non-believers were showing up. And we started to make friends with these people and discover new locations. This is an abandoned mine in Lake Elsinore, not that far away. We've gone like 3 times. This is the first time we went. We weren't sure we were gonna find it, and we did. And there's all these people that we met, and we're like, wow, there's a lot of people from different churches, a lot of people who didn't know who Jesus was, or a lot of people who were of different faiths that came, and things happened. I started to travel for it. Some of these photos are in Dallas. One's in Dallas. I went to Canada at some point and traveled for these Instameets. And This is one of my favorite ones. At this particular Instameet, oh no, actually, yeah, this particular Instameet, we got hit by a wave collectively together, and it was beautiful because it was a funny time. We remembered it, and um, it's unforgettable. And eventually, my Instameets turned into had a little bit more traction in a sense where I started to have worship nights attached to these Instameets, or times of just like talking. And eventually, we're not even taking photos anymore. We're just standing together talking and making friends. And random surfers who were just like, what's going on here? And we'll just talk and we'll tell them about Jesus or invite them to church. Sometimes we'll even do an Instameet attached to a globally impacting nonprofit organization, and this was with Charity Water. And at one of these Instameets, I met a friend who, afterwards, we're like, hey, let's go out. We're going to go out to eat if anyone wants to come. We're like, oh, we got to go, blah, blah, blah. And we're like, okay, bye, see you later. But this guy was like, where are you guys going to go eat? And we're like, oh, let's go eat. So as we're talking, we find out that he's just going through a time where he needs a place to live and then he needs a job. And it just so happened that I was working at the Bible college at the time. This was in San Diego, too, but I was working at the Bible college here in Murrieta, and I was helping manage a coffee shop. And I'm like, hey, so do you like coffee? And he's like, oh, yeah. And I'm like, well, I work at a place where we can't pay you, but we pay you in a place to live. And he's like, awesome, sign me up. And it was cool. I just met that guy today, and he's really awesome. And he married one of our friends. And I just gave it away. Anyways, my favorite Instameet of all was our wedding. Our wedding was great. This is a testament to those deep friendships we actually had with these people that we met through Instagram. A lot of them attended our wedding. Oh, yeah, Sarah's in there. Yeah, she was a bridesmaid. But a lot of them showed up, and not because like, oh, we're gonna do really well on Instagram so we have 500 people at our wedding. No, that's not why we made friends. We really wanted to make connection and community for the sake of the gospel, just to get people to connect with each other more than just online, more than just on Instagram. We wanted them to have a place where they can come together and actually be friends in real life. And Instameets proved that to me. Like even if we didn't meet in real life, a lot of these people were just like, the thing that you posted about that one thing about the Bible, it really made me think about my own soul. I'm like, awesome, great. And all these lifelong friendships that turn into actual discipleship relationships that not just Vales and I discipling all these people, but we connected people with other people. Like, where are you? Cool, I have a friend who goes to church there. Let's go hang out over there. And this was one of my favorite things because I saw all those people come together, and they're probably not going to be in the same room ever again until Jesus comes back. But it's just a testament to the fact that we make a connection, we build a community, and at the foundation of it all is Jesus Christ. So who are we becoming through the community that we're building? Are you building a community for your own influence? Or are you building a community around your mutual love of Jesus? And you can do that online. It could be just as real online as it is offline. But again, nothing replaces that face-to-face fellowship and interaction that you have together. But start that online then. Don't let online be that secret place where you don't love Jesus. 1 Corinthians says that, for though I am free from all, this is the very last verse, I promise, I have made myself a servant to all that I may win more of them. I've become all things to all men so that I might by all means save some. I do all things for the sake of the gospel so that I may become a fellow partaker of it. A while ago, I called social media a highway, though it's very often easily an idol. Amen. Sadly. But I believe as we keep the gospel as our motivation and Christ as our goal, I truly believe that a spiritual renewal can happen and can take place by way of these technological Roman roads that we have. Because of the gospel, everything is sacred. Let's remember that. Everything is sacred. Everything that we put our hands to, if you're a follower and apprentice of Jesus Christ, everything is sacred. There's no secular versus sacred. In your life, everything that you do is a rhythm of grace. And you need to know and ask the Lord, Lord, what is my place in this world? Social media is a marginal thing. But who you are and what in your place in this world should play out in everything that you do. So therefore, everything is sacred and is a matter of the soul. So if you fall and you fall into temptation, and maybe your idol factory creates an idol of social media, it does affect your soul. But praise the Lord for grace and mercy and His forgiveness and His ability to restore things. Also remember that God has tucked glory into the ordinary things of life. Yeah, and even in this ordinary block of metal, I turned off my notifications, just so you know. Oh, I have a text message. Anyways, but even in this ordinary block of metal, God can tuck glory into this. And you just need to see it. What God hath wrought, right? What wonderful things has God done? So, yeah, there's that.
Are there any questions? Yeah, does anybody have any questions about anything? We answered every single possible question. You have nothing. Or we just talked way too much. Sorry. They told us to cut it down from last time, and we actually made it longer. Sorry.
Oh, there's one right there.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Everything you did was very well researched, and I liked your delivery. Is there any chance that you're gonna probably bring this to the high school, but in a more, I don't know, because it could be more offensive if you bring all this data and all this, I think it's very informational, but is there a way that we could bring it to the high school and college kids about this and just talk to them about how they can use this for God's glory? Because I really like that we can do that. I mean, I just got back from a missionary trip, and I'm connecting with the missionaries in Europe through this. So that is the way that I feel that God's using me to encourage. But there's just a lot in there, and it's really mind-blowing, and I'm hoping that we can continue to do this, and I'm saddened that all this work went in here, and there isn't more people. Like, I just feel like this is something that our Valley kid can use, and I really think that almost like this is a pilot project for our community, not just here at Reliance, but through our community, because there's a lot of really good stuff. I think we can convert people to really understand that this is a God sometimes, and that we can remind people that we can change our habits and really be used in the way that He wants us to use it.
Yeah, that's a really no, that's a really, really great point. It is a real thing, the social media stuff that's going on. Oh, hello. Yes, my name's Tyler. Yeah, we did that this morning, but I guess we didn't get to it. My name's Tyler. This is my wife, Allison. We help out in the high school group, the high school ministry. We've been leading that for quite a few years, and we'll be soon heading that up when Kyle takes off. So we're very excited about that. So to your question, yeah, it's a very important thing. We realize that and understand that. This is not something that is new to us or to social media leaders and experts, and it's very much something that we want to bring to not just parents, not just moms, but students as well. And so to that end, yeah, we're being very intentional about how we present that. I'm not too concerned about offending people if the data is real and if this is a very important subject, which it is, then the truth is the truth. This is a very real, I said it this morning, but Satan is very powerful. The enemy is at work, especially in young people's lives, and that's extremely true today. And social media has just made it that much, I don't know if easier is the right word, or that much more readily available for the enemy to take hold. And so being diligent against that and fighting against that is extremely dear to my heart. And so in Reliance Church, yeah, we're being extremely intentional and finding ways to have these conversations, either in a group setting up front on a stage presenting data, or one-on-one conversations, very much so. So there is a lot of research that goes into that, and there's a lot of presentation that can come behind that, but this is not a one and done thing. Absolutely not.
I would love to see
it also tailoring towards that tween stage. Like, my daughter's 10, and we moved here from Tennessee 8 months ago, and it was sensory overload for her, coming from this small Christian private school. And she goes to Linfield, so it's not like she's just anywhere. And it was like a weekend, she got invited to a birthday party, and it was an electronics birthday party. Everybody brought their tablets, and now she texts her BFFs, and it's like, oh my gosh, geez, my older kids are in their 20s, so, you know, with them, it was high school when it all started. And at 10, she's like, everybody in my class has a phone and a tablet, and so, you know, I think it's very rough. She doesn't have any type of social media right now, but she's around, everybody in her class does.
Yeah, the data is extremely clear. It's not limited to one age group. And so we do not want to limit this information to one age group either. Absolutely not.
That's a great point.
Because I'm Generation Z, so I've been like raised up in this. Do you have any because everywhere I go, it's surrounded, and it's a lot of anxiety. So do you have any tips of ways to take a day to just anything to kind of get away from that anxiety? Do you have any tips for that?
In that sense, especially if the anxiety is triggered by social media specifically, I honestly say shut off the phone, put it on the other side of the house. Like what Zach says, doing like a sense of detox is very helpful, and it's very, very cleansing for the soul in a sense where now you need to get back into a rhythm with the Lord that it's healthy and that helps you reassess your outlook on life and those things, especially if you know that social media is a trigger for you, then it's time to take a break. And sometimes it's really hard. It's not a matter of just switching it off. A lot of adults are like, just turn it off. Like, it's not that simple, actually, for Gen Zers, because you feel isolated even more right away because you're like, no, my friends are talking to me, and what am I going to look at? So it does take a moment. And that's something thank you so much for sharing that, because it is really hard to share that. But that does happen. So even just a moment of switching it off, going outside, hanging out with your friends, or even like Lexi's awesome. You can hang out with Lexi. Have like a no technology day, and get back to that primitive state almost, and relearn that rhythm with the Lord. Not saying that you should get rid of social media entirely, but maybe just for a season. And it's going to be hard because it does feel like a detox. It feels like, oh no, like how else do I connect with my fellow generation? But really ask the Lord to reintroduce you to that rhythm of outside of that. So,
One thing I did actually earlier this year, I kind of had a season where I just felt like I was losing control of my use of the phone. I actually went and bought a flip phone and put my SIM card in there, and I just went for like 2 weeks with just the flip phone and like T9 texting, and it was weird. Yeah, but I couldn't believe just like the relief that I felt, or like it was like a weird pressure that just kind of came off of my life, knowing like I'm not going to get texted and all these notifications and all these things. Like when I was out in the world with just my flip phone, it was like this weird calm that I can't describe, that I was like, wow, I kind of remember this, and I haven't felt this in a long time. So if you're on AT&T or T-Mobile, you could use it. I'll lend it to you because I don't use it now. But something like that might work. You got a question?
I was going to kind of say on that too, you know, if you're going to put off that social media, make sure you put on something else. So maybe it's like, okay, when you put that off instead, it's almost like fasting, right? Then I'm going to replace it with seeking who God is, because then I'm going to find out who I am in Christ when I know who He is, right? So replace the off with an on, and then spend that time. That's where you find your rhythm again. So when you get back in the secure who you are in Christ, and then that will help you to see those things correctly.
Yeah, and you know, that pain actually might be a good thing. Like if you are lonely and feeling isolated, social media can be this kind of like weak balm that you can sort of like rub over that pain and like make it go away for a second, but it doesn't really go away. And if you are feeling like truly isolated, anxious, all those things, it might actually feel worse for a minute if you do kind of pull away from social media, but then you may actually be able to address the underlying issues more if you do that. So maybe feeling that pain is good. It depends.
So, I was born in the 70s where, internet wasn't even on the radar at all. So my husband and I have chosen, for the most part, to stay away from social media. But we are also noticing that our kids are growing up in such a different world, and we can't keep them away from all of that. Whether I would say the horse and wagon if it was up to me, but the rest of the world are using cars. And it's kind of, I'm finding it hard to find a balance where their world is not going to be like mine. And it's so highly addictive, and there are so many traps that it was just kind of harder to sin when I was a kid. It was harder to have access to things, and it's so overly available now that I guess my question would be, because as much as we do actually kind of do the reject approach, we try to focus on more relationships where we meet with people and all of that. But I can't hide or run away from the fact that it's there, and it's there to stay. And do you guys have any input on, how do I kind of guide my kids into this kind of world that is very digital?
Okay. Oh, sorry. Okay, so I think I have the oldest kids of us except for Brenda. Brenda should definitely talk on this. But just briefly, I would say, the Bible tells us to train a child up in the way that they should go. And it's not just like, teach them about Jesus and then they'll never not be a Christian. But it's like train them, figure out who they are and help them towards their bent. Yeah, it's really cool. And so, part of our job as parents is to figure out how we can equip our kids to exist in this world. And this world includes social media. They're gonna they're gonna be on it at some point. And so, how do we equip them? How do we prepare them? And it looks different for everybody, but there could be a time when it's like too young. But then, like faith parents, we're very involved and helpful in sort of demonstrating this is what it looks like to healthily engage in these things. And so we have to train our children. Anybody else? Okay.
I'll go for you.
I have the oldest kids here and 10 grandkids. So what I would say to that, one thing I want to say is that we were looking at a TED Talk the other day, and I don't know who the expert is, you would know, but he was saying, were doing research, and what he was saying is that the Gen Z generation, it's not so much that they're tech savvy, is that they're text dependent. And I don't think that we have realized what that actually looks like, because Gen Z is much different than even the millennials as far as their phone is now like an appendage, it's part of them. But there is a long line of history where as Christians, we have had to come against the things of the world, even when our children were little. There were things on TV that our children weren't allowed to watch that all their friends were watching. Everybody was watching Rugrats, but my children, I'm pretty sure. Everyone watched The Simpsons, but my kids. There are sometimes we just have to stand up against the world for the sake of the Lord. And I know that I think we can have this defeatist attitude that says, I'm just going to give up because I'm not winning this battle. And I know that you guys, you're coming at social media from a very healthy perspective, but most of the generation isn't healthy. And so when you're coming at something, it's like, when my son was acting in Hollywood and people would say, well, how do you get into it? And I was reluctant because it's like, I know that we're grounded and that we can do some things when you're grounded that you can't do when you're not grounded. And so I think that there is a dangerous part of social media to children, to people that aren't healthy, that don't know how to use it in a healthy way. And there are dangerous people out there. We've all read the stories. So, it is a conversation that I know, I hear your concern as a parent, and you're like, okay, what can we do? For me, I'm a grandma, so I may be completely out of touch, but I'd be like, hold off till the cows come home, till you can't hold off anymore. I liked someone said earlier that, someone had a social media account with their children, so you're training them on how these things work. You're on there with them, so it's a family account. They can get on, but they're on your account. Also, there's a lot of hidden apps, and these guys tell me you'll never find them. They're using different email addresses. They're taking it off when they come in. You're not going to be able to find that. So pray. Ask the Lord for powerful wisdom. He says that he will give us wisdom if we ask for it. And we need words of knowledge with our children, because we need to know, Lord, tell me something about this child, about their character that's not exposed, so that those things can get exposed, so that we can deal with those things. But maybe talk to some of maybe the boundaries that you guys have set. I know you have some set for your children, and just maybe talk through what's an appropriate age for all of these things. I know a lot of people have contracts with their kids over social media. I know a lot don't let them on till they're 18, and I'm sure they're the only kid that's not on it. But you know what? My kids survived without The Simpsons. They just did, So talk maybe about that a little bit.
Sure. At least for myself, there's just certain things that I just know if I do this, I'm just going to be on their way too much. And it's gotten to the point where I've literally gotten my wife to just, you make a password and screen time protect this thing. I don't want to go on there so much, so just block me. Don't tell me what the number is. I just need that. And that's been helpful. And then for our kids, we don't give them a phone with just completely unrestricted. It's if it's Netflix, it's, we know what show it is. We've kind of vetted it, and it's with a time box. Or, if it's a game, it's a game that's not super addictive and using all these tactics to, attract them. So as far as what age, that's difficult. It kind of depends on the kid and the situation. The problems that we face in social media, they're not really new problems. They're the same old problems, just kind of in a new box. Whether it's idolatry, lust, jealousy, meanness, all these things. It's the same stuff we've always had. It's just in a new, much more potent delivery system. And so just reading the Word with your kids, and when you do come across something, just go to the Word and just explain, okay, why is this wrong? Why do we not do this? And bring them along, train them. Did that answer your question?
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, we could talk, if you want, we'll all be around. We can talk about this stuff more. There's you can block things, and you probably should, for younger kids and stuff like that.
We probably have time for one more question. Something you maybe didn't get answered, maybe it's even off a different subject.
I just want to say I really liked how Faith talked about how to use it for the gospel and how to use that as the avenue to get it. I just loved your whole speech on that. It just gave it a whole different outlook and really using those scriptures and everything. So for me, I really appreciated that.
I can attest to that as part of community, because I wanted to reach moms with special needs, kids. And so I just reached out there on social media. Hey, I'm going to be going to Facebook, and someone wants to read with me. And through that, I met someone in the community who happens to be a believer. And anyway, that has created a relationship even until now. So there have been people who have just reached out through Facebook that I would have never met. But I think the important thing is that you reach them through Facebook, but then you do that in real life. You didn't just stay in Facebook. So even though we met in Facebook, it's the in real life thing that made the relationship even and lengthen. It wasn't necessarily social media, but that, again, in real life community that comes from that.
And it's really cool because I remember telling my parents about the very first Instant Meet. I was like, hey, I'm going to host this. And my dad's like, I'm going to send your brother with you, just so there's no weirdos that showed up. But they trusted me. and that's because they trusted their parenting of me growing up. And my parents, when I came on social media, they made sure to really research, like, okay,